What if everything we know about JonBenét Ramsey is wrong? The contradictions in the Ramsey family statements reveal a troubling pattern, but the question is, what are these contradictions really hiding? The early morning of December 26, 1996, dawned cold in Boulder, Colorado. Inside the Ramsey family home, a mansion exuding luxury and tranquility, something unimaginable had occurred. JonBenét Ramsey, a girl of only 6 years old, was found dead in the place where she should have been safest, the basement of her own house. A news story that shocked the United States and left the small town shaken. The Ramsey family, composed of John, Patsy, and their eldest son, Burke, seemed to be living an unimaginable nightmare. On the outside, Patsy's face was visibly marked by pain and despair. When the investigations began, questions arose. Few answers, many doubts, and the mystery only grew. John Ramsey, a successful businessman, maintained a calm, almost cold demeanor. Patsy, on the other hand, displayed intense pain, but also an instinctive defensiveness. Over time, both became the focus of the investigations, not only because they were the victims' parents, but also because, from the very beginning, their words failed to align with the facts. This made the public question, what else was being hidden? The moment the contradictions became evident occurred during the famous interview with Larry King in 2000, when Patsy and John sat down to answer questions that, theoretically, should have clarified the truth. But what we saw were lapses and contradictions that, over the years, continued to raise more suspicions. Right at the beginning of the interview with Larry King, the first contradiction became clear. When asked if they would take a polygraph test to prove their innocence, John Ramsey responded evasively. He didn't give a simple yes or no. Instead, there was hesitation. John looked down, shook his head, seeming uncertain about his own answer. If the police asked us to take it, we would. But the fact is, as revealed in other investigations, the police cookhouse had already requested this before, and the Ramseys refused. Another contradiction arose when discussing who would administer the polygraph test. When asked if they would allow the FBI to conduct the examination, the response was surprising. Patsy simply did not answer. Patsy averted her gaze. Her lip quivered for a brief second before changing the focus of the conversation. Later, they insisted they would take the test, but only with an independent professional of national reputation. It was a strange moment, as if they were trying to control the circumstances too much. But again, if they were innocent, why impose so many conditions? And it didn't stop there. Confronted with the possibility of being suspects, Patsy did something unexpected. She smiled, as if it were just a casual question. "We were never considered suspects," she said, but the public knew that wasn't true. From the beginning, the family was under the suspicion umbrella, as Patsy herself admitted later. These moments of hesitation, contradictory statements, and gestures that didn't align with the expected mourning made many wonder, what are they hiding? The contradictions didn't end there. Later, when Larry King questioned the exact date of the murder, he mentioned December 26th, the day after Christmas. John's response was a simple, However, JonBenét's tombstone reads December 25th. Why this discrepancy? In later interviews, John explained that he listed December 25th because the killer had written in the ransom note that they would call the next day. But this detail leaves a lingering question. If JonBenét was found on the 26th, why emphasize the idea that she died the day before so strongly? As we unravel these flaws and inconsistencies, the inevitable question arises. Could everything we believe about that terrible night be completely wrong? As the investigations continued, the Ramsey family's behavior began to raise even more doubts. Can you imagine the pressure of being seen as suspects in the murder of your own daughter? That should be unbearable. But something about the way John and Patsy handled the situation didn't seem natural. There wasn't the urgency you'd expect from parents determined to find the culprit at all costs. The contradictions in their testimonies only reinforced this. During interrogations, investigators pressed the family about the details of the day JonBenét was found. One moment stood out in particular. Patsy repeatedly stated that she found the ransom note at the foot of the stairs, and then sequence of events became confusing when confronted with more detailed questions. Patsy began to hesitate, her gaze wandered, and the story slightly changed with each new question. She said, I found the note, and then, I don't know, I just knew something was wrong. This raised another question. Was Patsy hiding something? Or was the pain so overwhelming that it confused her to the point of not being able to remember correctly? And John? He seemed too calm. During interviews, he spoke slowly, without the emotion you'd expect from a grieving father. Some said it was his way of coping with the tragedy. Others felt it was too suspicious. The coldness with which he answered questions only complicated the situation further. When asked why he went straight to the basement, John looked at the ground for a moment, took a deep breath, and shrugged. I don't know. Something was telling me to go down there. But the hesitation in his eyes seemed to tell another story. But how could he know? What led him to that exact spot in the house, as if he already knew what he was going to find? This type of response only heightened the conflict between the family and the investigators. Everyone's distrust was growing, and the more the Ramseys spoke, the more people felt that something was being hidden. The tension reached its peak when the Ramseys finally agreed to take a polygraph test, but on their own terms. They chose an independent examiner, someone they trusted, and did not allow the FBI to conduct the examination. This was a turning point. The FBI had rigorous methods and experience in polygraph testing, but the Ramseys refused. What were they afraid of? Even after passing the test, the results did not convince everyone. The first examination was inconclusive. This fact, of course, was not widely publicized immediately. Patsy and John underwent new tests with the examiner they had chosen themselves, and only after several attempts were the results considered satisfactory. But think about it. If they were truly innocent, why not undergo the most impartial and rigorous test right away? These actions not only increased the police's distrust, but also heightened media suspicion. The media, like lurking predators, smelled blood. And the more the Ramseys hesitated, the tighter the noose became. The public began to question every detail, from the hesitation to take the polygraph to the way Patsy reacted in interviews, always changing the subject when the question was too direct. The moment of highest tension exploded during the press conference, when Patsy, like a powder keg about to blow, shouted, "Open your eyes and your minds! We didn't kill our daughter." Was it a sincere outburst or a desperate attempt to divert suspicion? By this point, everyone's frustration, the police, the media, and the public, was at its peak. Since no one could prove anything concrete, all that remained were doubt. The contradictions in the testimonies, the inconclusive test results, and the Ramseys' insistence on controlling every aspect of the investigation began to seem more than just coincidences. Something was being hidden, and here lies the big question. What do these contradictions really mean? Were the Ramseys covering up something much bigger than we imagined? The morning after the press conference, the tension in the Ramsey household seemed to have transformed into something almost tangible. The air was heavy, laden with suspicion, distrustful glances, and unanswered questions. Outside, reporters camped out with cameras pointed at the front door, waiting for any movement that could provide a new clue about the case. Inside the house, Patsy was sitting on the living room sofa, nervously fiddling with a bracelet. The metallic sound of the pieces clinking was the only noise in the house, aside from John's heavy breathing, who stared fixedly at a point on the floor, as if trying to decipher an invisible riddle. The curtains were closed, blocking out the sunlight, as if that could hide what was really happening. The environment, once cozy and familiar, now seemed gloomy, almost suffocating. Patsy looked at John, her voice low and trembling. "John, why don't they believe us? Why do they think it was us? We lost our girl?" She paused, her eyes full of tears she struggled to hold back. "Do you think we did something wrong?" John didn't respond immediately. He pressed his lips together, his face hardened by constant pressure, but his eyes also carried a pain hard to ignore. He knew that, at that moment, the entire country was dividing its opinions about them. Part of the public saw them as victims of a devastating tragedy, while others saw them as suspects, hiding something. "Patsy, I already said it before. They need a culprit, and until they find the real killer, even they were being repeated so many times, seemed not to alleviate the weight Patsy carried on her shoulders. Can you imagine what it would be like to be in her place? Losing a child is already devastating, but being accused of such a brutal crime, a crime that took the life of your own daughter, that's something few could bear." The smell of freshly brewed coffee spread through the kitchen, but neither Patsy nor John seemed interested. The sound of cups being placed on the table by the maid was muffled by the growing tension. They lived as if they were in a bubble, isolated from the outside world, where every word they said was analyzed and judged. And at any moment, a new contradiction in their statements could emerge, bringing more suspicions. That polygraph test, for example, they had passed, but the fact that they chose a trusted examiner did not escape the critical eyes of many. "If we have nothing to hide, why not take the test with the FBI?" John asked aloud, but more to himself than to Patsy. That question echoed in the minds of everyone following the case. What were they really afraid of? And why so many conditions for a simple test that could, in theory, clear them once and for all? And there was still another question hanging in the air: JonBenét's date of death. During the interview with Larry King, John agreed with the interviewer, stating that the crime had happened on December 26th, the day after Christmas. But on the daughter's tombstone, the date inscribed was December 25th. A small confusion or an important clue? Now think with me. Why this difference in dates? Could it be that the Ramseys knew more than they were revealing? Or were they so confused and shaken that they couldn't even clarify that for sure? more. These small incongruities, which might have gone unnoticed under other circumstances, became huge in light of the magnitude of the crime. No one knew how or when it would blow up. The public, as well as the investigators, wondered, when would this story make sense? When would the answers come to light? With each new testimony, more questions arose. The truth always seemed just out of reach, as if it were hidden behind a curtain that no one could lift. Days passed, and the pressure only increased. With each new interview, there were more suspicious glances, new details that didn't add up. The Ramseys continued to insist that they were innocent, that they had lost their daughter in the cruelest way possible, and that all they wanted was justice. But at the same time, they always seemed to put themselves in a defensive position, as if they were constantly bracing for an attack. The investigations took months, and throughout that time, the contradictions kept emerging. One of them was about the ransom note found on the stairs, a long letter full of strange details and threats. The police began to wonder, why would someone who kidnapped a child stay in the house for so long, writing such a lengthy letter? It didn't make sense. It was as if whoever wrote it was comfortable, in no hurry to leave. Who would have that kind of calmness except someone from within the house? And then came the handwriting test. Patsy was directly questioned. Did you write this letter? The investigator's tone was firm but not aggressive. He wanted answers. She looked at him, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and indignation. No, I didn't write this. I've said it several times. But what the test later showed raised even more doubts. Patsy's handwriting had similarities to the letter. It wasn't conclusive evidence, but it was enough for the shadow of suspicion over her to grow. From that moment on, the public's trust in them began to crumble completely. Patsy was locking herself away more and more. Her behavior, which was once a mix of pain and anger, began to change. She seemed more distant, as if something inside her was broken. John, on the other hand, maintained his controlled demeanor. But as time went on, even he began to show signs of wear. In an interview, already short of patience, he rebuffed the accusation that they were protecting someone. I lost my daughter. How can you think we're hiding something? We want answers, just like everyone else. But was that true? Their defensive behavior made everyone wonder what else might be being hidden. And the public, increasingly confused, tried to piece everything together. In the end, after years of investigation, the full truth about what happened that Christmas night in 1996 never came to light. The case of JonBenét Ramsey remains officially unsolved. The question that haunts us all still remains: who really took JonBenét Ramsey's life that fateful night? Was it an intruder, as the Ramseys claim, or was someone passed away in 2006 without seeing the case resolved? She took with her the secrets that, for many, could have explained what happened that night. And John, to this day, tries to move forward, although the weight of the suspicions still follows him. With each new interview, he maintains his version, but the doubts continue. What remains of this case is a mystery that defies any simple explanation. How was a girl brutally murdered in her own home, surrounded by people who were supposed to protect her, and no one was arrested? How could so many contradictions arise from a single story? And perhaps the most difficult question of all, if someone from the family was involved, how did they manage to live with it for so long? In the end, what do we really know about the JonBenét Ramsey case? The pieces we have don't seem to fit, and time only makes the answers more distant. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than any word, and maybe that's what's most unsettling about this case. What wasn't said, the truths that remained locked inside that house, and were never revealed. One difficult question remains: will we ever know the complete truth about what happened to JonBenét Ramsey? Over the years, the contradictions in the family statements, the mismatched clues, and the lack of a clear conclusion continue to haunt this case. And perhaps that's what makes everything so unsettling. The fact that despite so many theories and investigations, justice for JonBenét still seems out of reach. With each new testimony, each revealed detail, an even greater shadow is cast over what really happened that Christmas night. Whether the Ramseys know more than they have told, or if they are just victims of a terrible coincidence, we may never be sure. But one thing is clear: not every monster hides in the shadows. Sometimes what we are seeking is closer than we imagine, hidden in plain sight. If you are also seeking the truth, subscribe now to Detective of Mysteries and join this mission. Each new video might bring the missing piece to solve these mysteries that haunt us. Together, as true mystery hunters, we will continue to unravel the most disturbing stories of the human mind. Who knows what awaits us in the next video? And if you've made it this far, comment. I am a mystery hunter, so I know you watched till the end. I read all the comments and love knowing who was with me until the last second of each investigation. And if you have any suggestions for mysteries or cases you'd like to see here on the channel, leave them in the comments. I'm I'm always on the lookout for the darkest and most intriguing cases. Who knows, your suggestion might be the next investigation to appear here. If you want to continue investigating the most intriguing mysteries and feel the tension of each revelation, click on the next video. What you discover in it will bring you even closer to understanding what really happens behind the scenes. Don't miss it. Stay tuned, because evil, just like the truth, may be much closer than we imagine, perhaps even right in front of all of us.